Hi guys, hello again. We are again in the videos in Edmodo. In this case we are going to study the Metal Age and the megalithic monuments. Okay, so let's start by the timeline. We see that the Copper Age, the Bronze Age and the Iron Age were the three stages that the Metal Ages were made up of. The first one, the most ancient, was the Copper Age, and scientists and archaeologists used to say it began in 7,000 years ago, more or less 5,000 before Christ. Then the Bronze Age more or less began 3,500 before Christ, and Iron Age 1,500 before Christ. But we also can calculate the years according to the time we are living now. So instead of saying 5,000 before Christ, we can say 7,000 years ago. Okay, this is simple, but more or less this would be the timeline of the Metal Ages. Alright, let's continue with the first and the most ancient age, which was the Copper Age, which is the cobre, la edad del cobre. And the Copper Age was the first metal to be used. Was hard metal, but not the hardest. And they used to use with copper kind of spears of arrows and other kind of weapons. In this case, the tools were not only used for agriculture, but also most of them were used for the war, and weapons were very important for the art of the war. Kind of this example, which is spears of arrows. Alright, the second stage was the Bronze Age, and the bronze was made later by melting copper and tin together. Tin was kind of estaño, otro tipo de metal más blando. But anyway, bronze was harder than copper, and people used to create decorative objects, kind of this one or this one, but also objects dedicated to the war. I mean, weapons, kind of those axes we are seeing now. And eventually, the third stage was the Iron Age. This age was made up by a harder metal and more resistant, and it was very useful to create swords, which is the most important weapon in that time. Apart from swords, they created also spears of arrows and axes. But they also created decorative objects, and besides money, the first coins ever made were created in the Metal Age, in the Iron Age. Alright, but apart from that, we have to say that the Metal Age was a very important period where there happened several inventions. For example, the sail, which was very important to the sailors to cross the sea. Besides, was invented the wheel, one of the most important inventions ever made by the human being. Or, for example, the plough. The plough was a very important instrument for agriculture. I mean, you know what the plough was used for, which is known as el arado. Un arado, which is used to remove the ground to later plant crops easily, and to the water could filter better in the ground. We have to say that in that Metal Age, there were created small settlements, kind of villages or little towns. But because of the trade, because metals were very times, lot of times were sold, and merchants were very important persons in that time. So people started to earn money because they sold the metals they created, and that, as a consequence, made the people grow the cities, and the small settlement passed to be a big city. So that time, the Middle Ages, was the first time big cities were created. Never before existed big cities, only small settlements or villages. And this is all because the metal trade, because this metal trade was developed in several regions, and the metals were very important at that time. So this is the reason why people needed to buy and wanted to buy metals. Okay, and according to decorative and religious and other kind of magic aspects, we have the megalithic monuments. This is all related to magic and religion. And at the end of the Neolithic period, those megalithic monuments started to be developed, were built up with blocks of stone, big blocks of stone. And they had the following characteristics. For example, the menhir. The menhirs were single vertical stones. They were probably used to worship the sun, the god of the sun. This is I have already explained in class. It was very important, the most important god ever, the god of the sun. Okay, another megalithic monument was the dolmen. The dolmens were more complex, composed by vertical stones, formed walls which were covered by horizontal blocks. They were used for burials, mainly for burials. At the bottom of these monuments always was a dead person. And at last, but not least, we have the stone circles. Stone circles possessed a religious context, even more religious context. I mean, were formed of standing stones, and the purpose was only religious, not to bury, not to keep the sun, only religious. Only magicians developed that stone circles. This is magic, this is religion, not else. And for you to know, the most important stone circle ever found is in England, in the south of England, and is known as Stonehenge. People and archaeologists used to say, in spite of the fact it was used for rituals, magic rituals or religious purposes, it was also built to keep the light of the sun and the light of the moon, but this is not sure 100%. Okay, so this is for the moment what I have to tell you about the Middle Age and megalithic monuments. You have to know that this is going to be asked next day at class, and I hope you study and attend and pay attention to this explanation. So I thank you very much. See you next day. Bye bye.